All right, now let's get into the mainstream issues. According to a paper that has been authored, and this great research done by banking consultants, Dr. Richmond Etiahene and KP Frimpong, the impact of the domestic exchange on 23 banks' balance sheets and the ability to provide credit to the economy could be significant, as the banks are holding about 37% of government securities. We're putting the statistics on the structure of the entities or the various players within the economy that hold the domestic debt as we have it, and Oliver will do that. The pie charts will give you a big description about the current state. If you look at the latest as was published by Bloomberg and Reuters subsequently, and so that pie chart will be on your screen very soon. And then we'll look at the banks, how exposed they are, and that also is there as well. And then we'll get to Ato Forson, who is saying that we're also not likely to get that in much. The related approval from the board of the IMF, as far as our discussions are, despite all that press conference that was organized and the assurances being given by the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, this goes to the heart of Ghana's financial sector. If you are a customer of any bank, you should be worried about this outcome of this research or paper that has been published by the distinguished banking consultant, Dr. Richmond Etiahene and the other. But now, okay, so this is the current structure of the debt. We have it currently. Those holding the domestic debt as we have it, external ones not included. And if you take a look at it, there's every indication that the commercial banks are holding in excess of 33%. Now, the latest we have in this report by Dr. Etiahene and Dr. Frimpong as well is indicating that the exposures are up to 37%. So banks, commercial banks, and you and I are customers of these banks. They've been exposed to government securities to the tune of 33% here. And this one is a November 2022 publication from Bloomberg. But the latest we have, as at March 2023, is indicating that the commercial banks of Ghana are exposed to the tune of some 37%. Now let's go to the next slide. That is indicating the banks that have been exposed. This one, enlarged, is coming from Standard & Poor's, and this was published mid-2022. The Ghana Commercial Bank exposed close to 50% to government securities, meaning treasury bills, bonds, etc. EcoBank, close to 40%. Absa Bank, we have close to 40% as well. Stanbic is there. The highest is Fidelity. I know that they've reached out to a number of my colleagues about us discussing these, but we're discussing this for all of us to get a better perspective about how our banks are. Fidelity is highest exposed, according to what has been published mid 2022 by Standard & Poor's. Standard Chartered Banks, just in excess of 40%. Cow Bank is also there. Zenith Bank, Across Bank, no, that should be Access Bank Ghana, and ADB. ADB is the least exposed. Now, when you put this into perspective and you look at what has been published by Dr. Etiahene and the other, that is Dr. Frimpong as well, on 9 banks that could be insolvent, if we strictly wanted to go by the metrics of measuring how solvent banks will be, there is every indication that you and I, a bank that, well, we undertake service with, if we strictly want to go by the metrics that we want to measure them by, per the Bank of Ghana Act, and per the regulations, those banks ideally should have been in some level of insolvency or administration. What are the implications on us getting a debt exchange or keeping the financial sector together? Let's go to Parliament. The minority leader has been telling the finance minister that despite the assurances that are being given the ordinary Ghanaian within the public sphere, we're not likely to get the approval of the IMF as far as this is related. Of that 3 billion we're expecting from the board. This is what he said.
Our president said that Ghana will be getting the IMF board approval by end of this month. Mr. Speaker, I don't know who is briefing His Excellency the President. Someone somewhere is doing a terrible job. Ghana will not be able to get an IMF board approval by the end of this month. Because, Mr. Speaker, even the board documents are not prepared. There are things we need to meet, and this is what we call financing assurances. We need to get China to give Ghana financing assurance that they are ready to accept a haircut. Mr. Speaker, aside that, we are also expected as a country to get financing assurance from Paris clubs, including Germany. Now, Germans are telling us that go and cut the size of your government.
So we put it into perspective. Mr. Alfred Thompson, what do you make of this? The banks and the debt exchange we're having and how unstable the financial sector is. You know, in the US, Credit Suisse, for example, is in huge trouble. There's a bank already as in the Silicon Valley that had to be saved by the US government. You look at the way they did it. They didn't go mentioning Dr. Dufour, Dr. Indum, etc. They just did it coolly and saved to the customers. And the bank is still in operation, no qualms. What do you make of this?
Good morning once again, Roland. You know, the whole world is in economic distress. Everywhere. I'm glad you
are coming with the whole world problem again.
But you even brought it up that when you look at US, the SVB, and you look at Signature Bank, and you look at Credit Suisse, you realize that everywhere there are issues economically. So it's not as if Ghana is in isolation. Everywhere we've realized that there are economic difficulties. The financial world has come to a stage where one has to rethink, one has to re-strategize, and one has to replan. Now, we've done, I would say personally, coming from the banking sector, we've done very well in Ghana so far because you realized, if you look at SVB, how they went under, it was because of the same government bonds, which has never happened in the history of US. But here you realize that we started early, we made sure that we are putting things in place, checks and balances, not to have an economic crunch as should have been. I wonder how it would have been if other holders were in place. But when you look at what Ken put in place, it's been a systematic way.
Which Ken?
Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister. It's been a systematic, like him or hate him, he's putting a systematic effort to make sure that the economy doesn't come to a halt.
Where's the effort? Which effort are you talking about?
That's what I'm replaying to you. And I'll take you through everything one after another. He's putting systematic effort to make sure that the economy doesn't come to a halt. I traveled around recently. I've been away for about 3 weeks. And when I studied what was going on in other places, you ask yourself, so how come we have been able to hold on so well to this, up to this stage? And it tells you what has been put in place. Now, when you look at Central Bank, for example, in the UK, the Central Bank had to hold on to all individual bonds for the government to even have the room to borrow, to let the economy run. Otherwise, the economy would have come to a stop, a grind. Then nothing could be done.
What has been put in place by Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister?
I'm giving you.
Please, let's cut it to the chase. We don't have enough time.
Don't push me. Let me be put a systematic place so that viewers would appreciate where we are coming from and where we've gotten to. Don't push it, please. When you look at Nigeria, we have over 83% of their debt servicing to revenue that they are doing, and it's quite steep. When you look at their debt service to revenue, it's over 83%. It used to be about 100 and something percent, but now it's dropped to about 83%. So it tells you that systematically everything is not good anywhere.
What has Ken put in place, Alfred Thompson?
Are you going to make me talk?
I asked you a question, and you are talking about Britain, you are talking about the UK, you are talking about the US,
because I want you to appreciate and understand that it's not only happening in Ghana. It's happening everywhere. That is the first and foremost thing you have to appreciate. And you even brought it up.
I asked you a question. What did Ken Ofori-Atta put in place to hold the economy together? Because that is what you said.
Roland, I said I'm rolling. And if you allow me to roll, I'll drop to the basics.
Please hurry up.
Hey, now you're rushing me on set, Roland. That is quite serious anyway. But let me go on. Now, when you look at our economic stability that has gone on so far, you realize that even though we have this DDE that was taking place, we had to put in the GFSF, that is the Ghana Financial Stability Fund, to help or cushion the banks so that they don't go under when all these things or when the DDE is taking place. Because you look at what is going on, you look at what you have to do to make sure that your economy doesn't come to a halt. And that is why we started earlier on when we were talking about all these bills and raking of revenue, the Momo tax and things that didn't fall through. But all these were things that were being put in place to make sure that with all that is going on, we will not be hard hit. At least we should be able to stabilize and run an economy that is still ongoing, but that hasn't come to a halt. So you look at the GSFS, we put in about, we are reckoning about 15 billion, that when these DDs are going on and the banks need to fall on something, they would apply. And these are not going to be given as loans. They are going to be used as equity for them. The equity in such a way that after some years, you can buy back. By that time, you have stabilized enough. So you don't run off, you don't run down, you don't go off a tangent. Now, when you look at our economy now, you realize even that out of the 137 billion that, that we hold as debts, the banks hold about 50.6 billion out of it. And this makes about 58% of the 84 billion DD that we were able to rake in, thanks to Ghanaians. It gives you the idea that, listen, despite everything, at least we've been able to put in measures that will not let the economy run over.
Thompson, we've undertaken this within a period where we've been told that people would have to shave off their interest and sometimes principals, and to the point that they have to ultimately redeem those investments in the next 14 years or by the close of the next 14 years. And before even the GSF or whatever it is that you say, there was the amalgamated trust, GAT. You've worked with NIB before. And so the structure with which we had the collapse or the debt crisis is coming as a result of poor fiscal management and consolidation. So these things you are saying...
Says you or says who?
It says what the figures are.
You think that is the only thing that caused this?
What does it cost, the current crisis we have?
But you yourselves just said that even the United States is going under because of this.
I didn't say so. I'm saying that Credit Suisse and the banks
or three banks were going down. Didn't you say that two banks were going down?
But does it mean that the United States is going down? You're a banker, so you shouldn't make those categorical statements.
So you want to tell me that the banks were just there and they just decided that, okay, let's close shop?
Banks in the United States of America are not collapsing the American economy. There are two banks that are in difficulty.
And I'm telling you that they are in difficulty because of the same issue that we are facing here. And it's the DDE. I'm telling you. That is through the same DDE. Why are they facing difficulties? Because of the central bank and the borrowing that has gone on. So what are you talking about? That's why I said relax and let me break down everything to you. And when you listen to it, these are very technical issues. And if you don't have the patience to listen to it, what is going to happen is that you just rush out and you never understand anything. And
I do understand the issues very well.
I don't think so, because if you do, you wouldn't tell me that I should rush through.
No, you are making conclusions that banks in America are collapsing. I said two banks. And we all know what the issues are related to those two banks.
What were the issues?
Please go ahead and make your comments.
Thank you very much. So it tells you that it's the same issues that you are facing here today, that they also faced. And so it's not a matter of Ghana alone, unless maybe you want to tell me that the finance minister was the finance minister in America and he also made sure that they were overborrowing or everything, or the government could not pay their bonds and things. That is why those banks are going down. However, I've told you that measures have been put in place, like the GSFS, like the making sure that the banks, we sat down, we did all these DDEs to sign and get about over 80%, where our target was about 80%, we got about 84% of the DDE for people to come on board, where instead of paying full interest and everything, and you suffer as an economy, in the economy, you've spread it over some number of years for us to go back or come down to rates that we wanted to achieve of the, the 55% of the debt to GDP that we want to achieve by 2028. So inevitably, what we are doing is that we are staggering, or we are pleading with people who have now approved and appreciated that, listen, where we are, we have a choice. Either you take money now or you lose out with the whole funding that you've taken. I can give you your 1 million right now. Inflation can be over 100%. The economy can be going bankrupt. And what will happen is that the 1 million will get finished within a day. Or let's all work together and make sure that the economy is stabilized. We stagger your payments or your receipts of your debt exchange that we've put in place. And at the end of the day, you get the best out of your funding, which has gone on very well so far. And I can say for sure that we can even see that for now, most of these banks that we are complaining about, that we say that they are going to go down, definitely I can tell you for sure that they would not go down. They would always rely on the GSFS if there is a need for it. That will be used not as a loan but as an equity to cushion them, for them to be able to go the longer haul, for us to have a stabilized economy. If we don't do that, what is going to happen is that we can run the economy at bay. What will happen is funds will be given out, funds will not be used well because it will just siphon out and everything. You can realize also that since December, inflation has been dropping. It's on a slow pace, maybe by a percentage or two. As at December, it was 54%. Right now that we speak, the February figures that came was 52. So it tells you that the measures that are being put in place, it's working. It's a workable measure. It's a measure that will help us stabilize the economy. It's a measure that will help us bring the economy back to life. As we sit here today, the finance minister is in Addis Ababa. They're having the African finance meeting. From there, he's moving to China to sit down with them and negotiate on the debt restructuring with China, which is a key measure in making sure that we meet the March deadline. March, as the minority leader said, it will stagger a bit because of the delay in the 3 bills that they should have passed since February 7th that it has been on floor. I mean, it's been postponed and postponed. We hope and we pray that by Thursday, as they are going to deliberate on it, they look at Ghana first, they look at the interest of Ghana, and they approve the bills. That is the income tax bill, the excise duty and excise stamp, and the growth and sustainability levy that needs to be passed. After that, the Paris Club too is having a meeting by tomorrow, and they are hoping to, it's a 22-member credit committee, more or less, official credit committee. They are hoping to meet to see the sustainability of most countries. Ghana is included, and we hope to at least get something out of that. We believe that with everyone coming on board, there's economic stability and rebounding back. It's a possibility, and it will not affect the economy. It will not affect the banks that we are looking at, and we believe that everything will stabilize. Okay.
If you look at what he said to be the great initiatives by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, in that report that's been co-authored by Dr. Tuahine and Frimpong, just before the recommendations is that a central lesson of the 2017-2018 Ghanaian banking crisis is that when regulators hold back from requiring financial institutions to confront their losses, the losses can rapidly become much larger. That also means that the Bank of Ghana has been fingered here. Looking on, the banks are making losses, the NPLs are just falling, and then the so-called action we're supposed to have been taken in 2017-2018, the banking crisis, etc. The central bank certainly failing at that, and the finance ministry also just condoning a conduit.
So this morning, once again, my friend here, common with MPP, from Mr. Akufo-Addo to the very last person, they are never responsible for anything. So this morning, my friend is telling me that a crisis in Ghana, that is the cause, largely by the mismanagement, the reckless borrowing and expenditure by Mr. Akufo-Addo and his talking vice president, the chair of the economic management team, they are never responsible for anything. So you heard him this morning trying to say that in the US, the Silicon Valley issue, it is because of government issue. What you don't know is that the major owners or shareholders pulled out their finances, resulting in the crisis.
67 billion.
Yes. So please stop globalizing your mismanagement and your reckless borrowings. That is what has brought us here. And you see, Roland, we are dealing with a government, the most resourced since 1992. This morning, I can give you a breakdown of the annual revenue outturn under Akufo-Addo. In 2017, total revenue minus oil and what have you was 33 billion. 2018, 39 billion Ghana cedis. 2019, 45.6 billion Ghana cedis. That's the revenue they made. 2020, COVID year, do you know that in COVID year, this government made more revenue than when there was no COVID, 47 billion. 2021, they made 57 billion Ghana cedis in revenue. 2022, just a year ago, 75 billion Ghana cedis. So within the space of 6 years, Akufo-Addo, Bawumia, Ken Ofori-Atta have extracted tax revenue alone from Ghanaian businesses, Ghanaian households, and what have you, amounting to 298 billion Ghana cedis in 6 years. Most resource. Do you know that in 8 years of John Mahama Mills government, the total financial envelope that we had, including taxes, loans, grants, was 248 billion. So what it means is that tax revenue alone had given the Akufo-Addo administration more money than John Mahama Mills or whoever got in 8 years, minus loans.
How does the revenue match up to the current crisis we're facing?
The reason is that our problem has never been lack of resources. Our problem has been as a result of recklessness in borrowing and expenditure. These two line items. Because you see, there is a common saying that you cut your coat according to what? The cloth that you have. So you don't go looking for something when your cloth does not match up. So we have a situation where, as a result of the huge borrowings, among other things, we've gotten to the point where we needed to restructure our debts. Now look at the narrative. When Ken Ofori-Atta brought the issue of debt restructuring, he told us that the restructurable debt was 137 billion Ghana cedis. You recall?
At the time.
Good. And that they were going to get a participation ratio of almost 80-something%. So the understanding is that 80-something% of 137 billion will be somewhere around 100 billion.
Very well.
Then, for some strange reason, when they realized that there was difficulty in them getting all the 137 restructured, they reduced the number. So finally, we were dealing with the restructurable debt of 97 billion, no longer the 137 billion. And so when they tell you that they got 80% participation ratio, it is 80% of 97 and not 80% of 137.
How do you come by that conclusion?
No, because that's the data. That's the available data. So even the restructurable debt, they had an issue with it. But even what is more curious is that, and I realize you brought the issue of Bank of Ghana. You see, the Bank of Ghana is supposed to be the regulator. The Bank of Ghana is governed by the Bank of Ghana Act. That act was passed in 2016. That's the amendment. Now, if you recall, Section 30 of the act is clear on what the Bank of Ghana can do or cannot do. The act specifically says that in a fiscal year, the Bank of Ghana can give overdraft advances or whatever to government of Ghana not more than 5% of the total revenue of the previous year, fiscal year. As we speak, immediately the Akufo-Addo administration came in and we exited the IMF engagement in 2019, if you recall. They started borrowing massively from the Bank of Ghana. So in 2020, they did 10 billion Ghana cedi, contrary to what the act says. In 2021, they did 43 billion Ghana cedis, contrary to what the act says. In 2022, they have done 50 billion Ghana cedis borrowing. So what it means is that the Bank of Ghana is printing money and putting into the system. This year, from January to today as I speak to you, Bank of Ghana had printed 4 billion Ghana cedis and given to...
But the Bank of Ghana in November 2022 came out with a statement to explain the reasons why and how those borrowings to government have been allotted. How do they contribute to the current predicament we find ourselves?
No, because you see, when you borrow more and you put, Bank of Ghana, you give Government of Ghana that kind of money. So in the space of 4 years, we are looking at 10 billion, 43 billion, 50 billion, and 4 billion, even this year alone, within the space of 3 months. When you put this kind of money, you see the typical Ghanaian, right, prefers to consume than to save. So the marginal propensity to consume is always higher than the marginal propensity to save. So the net result is that you're going to have a lot of money in people's hands. The net result will be inflation. So when we talk about the inflationary trend, hyperinflation, and remember that the last time we came close to 53% inflationary rate was 1983. That's about 40 years ago. So the Akufo-Addo record is a 40 years ago mess. That is what he had repeated. But the point I'm making is that if you have a government that had all these resources, why should we get to the point where we are today? Where today, as I speak to you, our finance minister is in Addis Ababa on his way to China to go and beg the Chinese. Because of the 5 billion that we owe, multilateral, bilateral, whatever, 35% of it is owed to only China, amounting to $1.7 billion. So we need the Chinese to agree to a restructuring. But you see, the Chinese don't do restructuring. Do you know why? Because as we speak, the IMF and the World Bank are not willing to restructure their debt with us. So the Chinese are saying that the people calling for the restructuring are not willing to do that. And so if you recall, the China Exim Bank officials were in Ghana. Nothing useful came out of it. And so our finance minister is now forced to go to China to go and further beg for restructuring. That is not going to happen. You should be aware that as we speak, we need to get the Paris Club, the 20-member Paris Club, the credit committee to agree. Yes, but you know that we have already defaulted on most of our loan commitment. So we are a very risky country today. How did we get here, Alfred? It's because of your recklessness. And you see, instead of admitting and taking responsibility, this morning you are trying to draw parallel. That in America, Silicon Valley, they have done this. Please, you need to demonstrate humility. You are asking Ghanaians, as at this moment, to join you. And remember that he did talk about 3 tax handles that are coming on. And they need them passed because part of the IMF conditions. They want to amend to existing and introduce new taxes. These people, you have gotten 298 billion Ghana cedis in tax revenue.
We need revenue to get out of...
No, so I'm saying that the problem
Don't
is
we
not,
need revenue,
the problem is not lack of revenue. You simply need to cut your coat according to your cloth.
Which you think the government is not doing.
They are not willing to do it. But you recall here, when the German ambassador, when the German ambassador said
give us advice.
Said we should learn to cut down on our expenses. The president went to the independence celebration, the State of the Nation address, and was taking a swipe at the German ambassador. Meanwhile, this same Akufo-Addo is begging the Germans to talk to the Chinese on restructuring. So what kind of person are you?
Now, Mr. Thompson,
you want to eat your cake.
The reality is that we need to situate,
how do you do that?
We need to situate these bank exposures within efforts that have been made by government. And I know that, well, we've done one district, one factory, a number of initiatives, and all of them would have to have a certain drawdown from these same institutions. And also borrowing to government through these fixed assets are sometimes the ways by which the financial sector also tends to circulate revenue. How do we give a certain understanding to the ordinary customer that they are safe despite these difficulties and their banks exposed, whilst at the same time telling Eduji and the opposition that, look, government did these for the better interests of the Ghanaian people, with the explanations that we have.
Okay, thank you, Roland, once again. I believe Eduji doesn't understand one thing. When you are growing an economy, you definitely would have to receive more revenue and you have to do more expenditures. It's automatic.
How do you mean?
How?
I mean, when the economy expanding, it will not stay at 248 billion revenue as you are raking in. Definitely it will grow. That is how an economy expands, and it shows its expansion rate. So if he doesn't understand it, or if the NDC doesn't understand it, it's their own problem.
Is it not a question? Please let Alfred talk.
When you were delivering on your lies,
No, go ahead. Lies.
I kept quiet.
Which one of them is a lie?
All of them.
Please. Let's not have this banter.
Now, when you're looking at all these, he claims revenue and what has been done, I don't think in this country anyone would sit here and say that over 298 billion has been chopped. I mean, if you are not in this country to know what is going on, then you have a big issue. If you are not, you have a big issue. Coming to the bank issue, I have explained earlier on that there is no way the finance minister will sit down for these banks to go down. We've already done a financial sector cleanup. We raised their minimum capital requirements up. So definitely it tells you that they are at a threshold that is higher than previously how it used to be. It's now about 400 million. It used to be about 30 or so million. And so it tells you that the difference is huge. Now, banks rely on two things. Either they are giving out loans or they are investing your funding. And they invest your fund to get enough money to give out the loans. So definitely it goes in tangent that they work together to make sure that they give you what is expected. I can tell you for sure that there is no way we would sit down and watch these banks go down. And that is why we had to create a fund that will support them even in times of crisis. It's not that the fund has been created so everyone should just go and dip their hands in. No, that is not how it's done. You will go and you apply as usual like everybody else. So if you sit here and you castigate the government for doing or putting in initiatives that will help save an economy, then I have a problem with you. Because it means that you don't understand what is going on. You don't appreciate what is going on. And you don't even know that whatever crisis we are in was not only a domestic thing. It's all over. And I've said that
what else caused it?
Every crisis the economic crisis that the economic crunch that is going on, I've stated over and over again. That is not a thing that is only happening in Ghana. So you can say, oh, it's only Ghanaians that they didn't manage the economy well, so things have gone bad. And definitely, once you are managing something, there will be good sides and there will be bad sides. You cannot say that, yes, everything you are doing is 100% neat. Definitely, some people would appreciate what you are doing, some people wouldn't. So you buy all in. And over and over and over again, the minister has come to say that, listen, at the end of it all, he is sorry about what has happened because he is in charge. But whatever he has to do to bring this economy back, he's doing. You sit here and you say Bank of Ghana has printed money and has done whatever it is. But you don't understand that they didn't print money, but they had to buy in some bonds that needed to be paid at a particular point in time. Those bonds were bought.
What commercial activity the Bank of Ghana engaged?
Please allow him to land.
Okay.
Those bonds were bought because if we hadn't done that, and that is why I tell you that when you study and appreciate the initiatives of the finance minister and the Bank of Ghana governor, you realize that they were doing things that will save this economy from going into a crisis that will be beyond reproach. They had to buy it to pay the people off and for the government to have that room to do their economic activities very well. Sometimes people will sit there and say, but Bank of Ghana is not a commercial bank, they are not into commercial activities, but it's the bank or the lender of last resort, one. Two, it's they run all our the monetary policy and everything. So you should understand and appreciate that whatever they do, one way or another, will affect the economy. And the governor will not sit down for the economy to go bad. And at the end of the day, when interest rates are going higher, when your CD to the dollar is devaluing and everything, We don't appreciate all these things. And so you realize that even in the midst of all these challenges that were going on, they were looking at ways of stabilizing the dollar. And that brought about this oil for gold and everything. They were looking at the situation where they will make sure that interest rates are coming down. Inflation is coming down. All these things are being put in place. And we are feeling the ripple effects that is going on. Now you sit here and you say that, yes, the German ambassador said that they should cut the size of government and everything. Yes, he said it.
You didn't hear him?
Oh, Roland. When Eduji was talking, you were not behaving this way.
No,
that's not true.
No,
that's not true.
But you are not telling that you should hurry up and everything.
Oh,
like you did to me.
He even gave you more time. I was monitoring.
Oh,
Eduji,
why? What is your issue?
No, please continue.
Yeah, my friend, don't know that.
Please continue.
Now, when you look at the size of our ministerial portfolio, I've studied it over and over and over again. And you can go and do your homework and see. Over 80% of the MPs, of the ministers are MPs. So even if you cut down, and there's an amount, a portion in the constitution that says that you should take also people who are not MPs to be there. But we've even gone beyond that and made sure that more of the people who are in are MPs. When you look at even the recent changes that went on, apart from one person, all the other people that were brought on board are MPs. Apart from, what do you call him, Boating, Chieftaincy. All the other ministers are MPs. So it tells you that whether we like it or not, the president will pay the MPs. So he's using that situation to help manage the economy. Because when you're in crisis, that is where you need more hands to come and help you to work. But more hands where you are not going to pay out of the box, but those who are already being paid. Where has he gone wrong? It tells you that he appreciates and manages the situation better than what the alternative needs to be. And it scares me because now it's making me believe that the alternative that they claim to be is more scarier than we are anticipating. If they were to be in this crisis, how would they have managed? Because I don't see anything that they are doing better.
First of all, we won't get here.
When you look at the debt ratio, you realize that they did not do anything better within the debt ratio. When you look at the percentage ratio of the economy as against the debt, they haven't done anything better.
In 2017, what debts did the Akufo-Addo government come to meet?
I said, when you look at the economy, you don't look at the debt alone. When you look at the total economy as against the debt.
I'm asking you. You are mentioning debt. I didn't mention debt, and I'm asking.
That's why I say you can do your research.
I should do my research.
Yes. I'm telling you what I have to tell you.
Okay. In 2017, what was the debt?
You and me know what the debt was. It was 120 something.
Okay. What's the debt now?
It's about $3 something in dollar terms, yeah.
Okay, so the debt we have as at the last time it was reported was 575 billion.
I'm talking about dollar terms. I said that's why I use the word dollar terms.
Because it is convenient for you to argue that way.
Why is it convenient for me?
All right.
Because that is how when I'm using the international figures, it's easier for me in dollars than always converting.
How do we pay the debt? We mop up cedis to pay the debt, right?
Definitely, when you are going to pay when you are going to pay international, you don't pay cedis, you pay dollars, and that is why we are doing everything convenient. Oh, where did you let me land?
Let him land. Please land.
Why are you in a rush?
You've landed.
When you were talking, I didn't realize.
I thought you landed. Okay, go ahead.
So whatever you are doing, when you are looking at your debt, you don't look at debt in isolation. You look at it as according to your economy, how big it is, and that is how you measure. And so measuring it, and don't forget that the debt that Akufo-Addo, President Akufo-Addo has right now was not built in a day. That has been going on all over since when? Independence.
The 120 billion that has gone to 575.
When we were leaving office, what was our debt ratio in 2008? Wasn't it about 9 billion?
Yes, it was.
And didn't it grow to 120 something billion?
Yeah.
Did we complain?
If you net off the 9 over the 120, what do you get?
Is that how you just net off? You see, I've been saying something that, and I tell you that you are not being technical about it.
I'm very technical. Look
at the size of your economy and look at the debt.
But you mentioned 2008 or 2009.
Roland, why are you behaving,
this way? No.
Is it that you don't want me to flow, or is it that you don't want people to understand what I'm saying?
No, please. You said 2008.
I am saying that when you are looking at your debt, look at your size of the economy as against the debt. And when we are even leaving office, we are talking about we have increased the debt. We have increased the debt. Yes. When we are leaving, how much was the debt as against the economy? And how much did they come and put us against the economy?
I understand that bit.
And all these things, you don't look at it in isolation. It works hand in hand. That is how you run your economy. So I can tell you for sure. And listen, the debts, any debt that is raised is not an approval of Ken Oforiatta. It's an approval of Parliament. So if Parliament they do not approve this debt, we cannot go into it. That is one thing we should understand.
You say the level of...
If you look at this argument, how does it
the level
weigh with the current crisis we have?
The level of double speak, hypocrisy by persons associated with the NPP.
What do you mean by that?
First of all, sometimes they think we do not have appreciation of our history. Kufuor came to power, became, a beneficiary of HIPIC. By reason of the HIPIC arrangement, $5 billion that ordinarily you'll be paying as services, servicing of your debt was forgiven you. So what it does is that it provides you a fiscal space. We came, no such benefits. But the point is this. At the time we were leaving office, we let a debt to GDP ratio of 56%. By December 2016, our total public debt, without any below the line items whatsoever, everything owed by Ghana was 122 billion Ghana cedis. Today, you've taken this economy and moved our debt to GDP ratio of 56% to 103%. That is your scorecard. You have moved our public debt from 122 billion Ghana cedis to 575 billion, minor Sino Hydro, minor Dachi bond, minor Esla PLC bonds. So if you put all together, our public debt is in excess of 600 billion Ghana cedis. Do you know that for the first time, the November report of Bank of Ghana, they provided a footnote and said the public debt excludes Sino Hydro. All this while, when we're telling the talking vice president that his narrative about Sino Hydro does not or is not true, he said, look, we don't know what we are talking about. In fact, he even said, oh, we don't know how to read. As I speak to you, we have not been able to process even one, whatever of bauxite, create an escrow account, use it to service the debt. So by June, all the Sino Hydro drawdown becomes part of our public debt. We were told that they were going to use bauxite innovation to resolve that problem.
That it was a better deal.
It was a better deal. What I do know about butter is that like for like.
Yes.
Now it's now part of our public debt. And what is it talking about? Instead of admitting that you have mismanaged the economy, there have been pervasive corruption, there have been so much of recklessness in how you have handled the economy, you are telling us that no. And that is why you see, Roland, I find extreme problem. Look, the president at the State of the Nation address, for instance, said, oh, it is out of his own government volition that they decided to do the audit of COVID-19 funds. Correct. Do you know that in the year 2020, COVID alone gave us 33 billion Ghana cedis? How much are we asking from the IMF today? $3 billion. The same amount, we got it in 1 year due to COVID and mismanaged the money. Do you know that it was the IMF, as part of the conditions for the bailout, that Akufo-Addo, unless he accounts for COVID money, they will not even start the engagement with him. That was why he now agreed to the audit of COVID. And when the COVID-19 audit came out and exposed the thievery, that for the first time we spent 11 million Ghana cedis without receipt. And when the auditor forced the people, you know what they gave them? Honor certificates. You are an accountant. You have worked in a bank. If your bank junior officers present honor certificate to you, would you accept it in the audit of your bank? Never. Because you only use honor certificates when you know it's like tabletop. It's like tabletop purchases. 11 million Ghana cedis spent, chopped.
But you know what the Attorney General has said about that?
I mean, it's the most ridiculous, reckless.
What do you mean by it's the most ridiculous?
It's the most ridiculous, reckless.
You mean what the Attorney General is saying?
Because you see, what was Attorney General's challenge? That why did the Auditor General publish the report? Section 23 of the Audit Service Act provides in clear terms that the Auditor General shall mandatory cause to be published his reports. So what the Auditor General did was consistent with the Audit Service Act. Now you have an Attorney General saying that. Do you know why? Because the audit report exposed Akufo-Addo, exposed the thievery of COVID.
What is coming from government communicators, you know? And Alfred says here is that there are borrowings, but it's also pegged to the size of the economy. I wanted to ask him.
No, ridiculous.
Well, so if we have a population and economic size that is bigger than this, does it mean we'll go into more debt crisis?
You see, that borrowing conversation, that the borrowing corresponds with the size of the economy, it's not economics. It's not economics. I say it's not economics because, you see, in 8 years, the Mills Mahama Emisata administration borrowed Eurobond alone $3.5 billion, right? Do you know that in the space of 6 years, Ken Ofori-Atta, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo on Eurobond alone, $11 billion. How does that relate to the size of the economy?
One district, one factory.
Do you know what they were doing?
One district, one factory, one constituency, $1 million.
No, do you know what they were doing?
We have the free SHS for you also to...
You see, do you know what
Ghanaians are enjoying this?
Please, they were using the borrowing to create an artificial stability for the city. So annually, Ken Ofori-Atta was doing $1 billion
you are claiming
minimum.
It's not real.
It's not real.
We're just creating the fiscal space with the external funding.
So what happened is
a big accusation.
Yes, if you recall, in 2020, when the budget statement was read November 17th, by February, the various credit rating agencies downgraded us. When they did, we could no longer get the Eurobond. So look at the depreciation of the cedi immediately when the Eurobond market was...
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to let you know that, one, our finance minister was benefiting from the borrowing by way of his company. Two, do you know that we could have prevented this IMF program if we had approached the IMF a year earlier? Do you also know that our finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo Bawumia, had the opportunity to sign on to what is called the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, the DSSI. But you see, if you sign on to it, you have to reduce your borrowing. But because our finance minister was benefiting from the borrowing, he decided that he was not going to sign on. So the end result is this dubious debt exchange program where for the first time, a former Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana had to defy everything to join pensioners. Can you imagine? Akufo-Addo, who is a beneficiary of 298 billion Ghana cedis in total tax revenue, minus borrowing and grants, still needed pensioners' fund. Persons on pension, their money, in order to keep this economy afloat. Imagine a parent look after you. You go to the university. You started working. You go bankrupt to the point that you now have to go back to your parent to say that if you don't give me your pension, I will die. That is the situation. So we are talking about an economy that was so robust because, if you recall, the IMF day that we went, the $900 and something million we got. Do you know that we had only 300 million coming under us? The remaining $600 million came under Akufo-Addo. So even though we took the fall, the bulk of the money came. As we speak today, Akufo-Addo is telling the IMF and the World Bank that this bailout, the $3 billion, they should give it to him now. So he will chop everything now before he leaves in less than 2 years.
I think that's
the issue is not. You see, the issue
we
is
need
not.
the fiscal
Hold on.
space.
The issue is
so
not.
I think that economically we have to put the.
See, let me tell you
into
something. When you talk about fiscal space, and so that I can conclude.
You are concluding with this.
Yes, if you recall, Bawumia in one of the lectures, the anchor hold.
Which of them? The central investing
one? The central investing one, with the anchor hold. When we went to the IMF, Bawumia's conversation was that, how come that we're doing...
Where he said that...
We're doing 9 billion Ghana cedis That's our debt payment, interest payment and amortization.
Annually.
And that it did not create the enabling fiscal space. Today, under Bawumia, as the chair of the economic mismanagement team, he had been doing consistently 33 billion Ghana cedis on interest payment and amortization, far in excess of the 9 billion that he accused the Mahama administration for. So we are talking about a bunch of people who are not only incompetent, but equally reckless.
All right.
Extremely reckless. And it is the recklessness that have brought us here.
How are we likely to get this IMF approval at the board level for this bailout by April or May? Since you have confessed that much is not possible.
I haven't confessed. I said that it's likely that there will be a meeting on it, but it will not conclude. It's likely. And it depends. It depends on Thursday what is happening. It depends on the meeting that the finance minister is going to have in China, and it depends on tomorrow's Paris group meeting, the Group de Paris, the meeting that they are having. Now, you see, when he was going on and ranting and talking so much about all that is going on, he talked about the Chief Justice. And isn't this the same group that says that there's a culture of silence in Ghana? Isn't this the same NDC group?
Now they are saying that if people are stealing your money, you can't even shout.
The Chief Justice can go out and demonstrate. So
you are taking her money, so she's shouting.
This is where I want people to see the double standard, the double tongue of the NDC.
You mean the former Chief Justice?
Yes, the former Chief Justice. If she hasn't got that right, if she hasn't got that privilege, if the culture of silence was there, I don't think she would have come out to do what she wanted to do.
Why so?
And it's a privilege. I mean, no one can take it from her. But we know that they will not have accommodated that. Anyway, when he talked about the currency and everything that is going on about the currency and the economy and everything, you see, when you borrow and you don't use the money well, to grow your economy, you don't expand your economy. What happens is that the borrowed money now becomes like a shrinked fund. So you can't have that fiscal space to go out and borrow to develop more.
Is that what happened to the way we borrowed?
That's what happened when they were borrowing.
No.
But when you look at our economy, the growth in the economy and the expansion that is going on, and that's why they don't appreciate and understand.
What do you use the borrowed fund for?
Oh, please. Every
it's a simple
Every
question.
approval made in Parliament is for a specific purpose.
Thank you very much.
And they go on to road shows, they come to brief Parliament.
Thank you very much.
No. The Eurobonds have no such.
All they keep on
Eurobonds have no such.
All they keep
That's
on
a
saying
fact.
is that, and they've borrowed, and because Ken wanted to gain and everything.
Which is true.
Let us not go. You're a politician, and we keep on doing things that are worrying us as a nation. And we'll keep on doing it till there is a stop.
What's your point?
My point is that let us look at the reality on ground.
Which is a reality?
Why?
No, Alfred, I just want you to know it's a reality.
What the money was used for. Was it for a good purpose or for a bad purpose? The Parliament approved. If the money was not used, did the Auditor General come out to say that, okay, you've borrowed this money, you say you're going to use it for A, B, C, D, you did not use it for it. What has happened to it? All these things are things that are revolving, and it goes on.
Have you observed, and the latest being the German emissary, who was saying that we're spending on freebies or on expenditure items that ideally we should have the confidence to cut. And so
he was talking in with what went through the COVID time. There were those freebies.
And so in relation
to that, is he talking about the freebies of cutting and free education?
And so in relation to that, if overall you go borrow and you want to use them for actions or items or projects, they should be ones that will give you good returns. And you're a businessman.
And that is what I'm telling you. That is what I'm telling you.
If you were managing your business, and the way we borrowed from 2017 up to today, 3 billion. Do you think that's the way you would have managed or expended whatever it is that you borrowed?
Don't forget that some of the borrowings of the, the 3 billion and the Eurobond were to offset some of the debts with high interest rates that were already there and the time that were due for it. So don't think it was. So let us not assume that we're just borrowing just for borrowing sake, because you can't just go and borrow for borrowing sake, and you seek parliamentary approval before you can do any borrowing. So if you tell me that Parliament is approving just for borrowing sake, then we have a serious problem with Parliament, which I don't think ADG wants to say that. But for political gains, you just come and sit down and make some noise. Coming back to the situation, listen, Roland, we are in a situation, or we are in a time where I would say that we need to all come and make sure that this IMF bailout is fully approved to help rebuild this economy.
Somebody will ask, now who caused them?
Now who caused them how?
Now who caused where we are?
I have told you that it's not a one-day event.
It was caused by who?
It was a continuous event that has gone on, including the world changeover. Including the world changeover. Because when you look at what is going on around the world, there is a changeover that we will one day appreciate it, and it will go into our history books where people will discuss it. That it was an economic order that had changed,
Roland,
in a way.
Our inflation of 52 point something percent is.
How is it a world order?
If your economy is not dependent on only you.
But you said you take
your
the
Bank of
economy
Ghana
from
had given this
taxation to
amount of
production.
money.
Yes, but you are still doing it. It's not a one-day
have to
event.
go for a
No,
break.
listen, it's not a one-day.
Roland.
Roland, it's not a one-day event when you are taking from taxation.
anytime-
Oh, I'm on floor. Why are you doing this?
He's
let
giving
him
you
talk.
three.
I was responding to your this thing.
No, he's giving you
Please,
three
gentlemen, let's
opportunities.
you conclude.
Thank you very much.
Conclude.
When you are moving from taxation to production,
That's what you said.
It doesn't become
All
a
those
one-day-
lectures by
No,
Dr.
It's not
Baumia.
a one-day event, and we've stated it that it's an ongoing event. You know,
After 7 years, it's still an ongoing event. To the point
If-
that
if-
the
if-
Bretton Woods
if-
institutions have discredited us. To the point that
discredited you on production.
credit
No,
rating
discredited you on
agencies have
production.
downgraded us to the
I'm coming.
point where
Did
we're
they
level
discredit
of.
you on production, on your production base?
But why is that the
you are
IMF
going-
then hasn't approved bailout?
No,
It's
are you
because-
saying that? No, are you saying that the Bretton Woods discredited us, that we are not moving into a production base?
Are we moving?
But don't we know that you are moving? Don't we see that you are moving? We go to communities, we see the 1D, 1Fs that are going on. It's not something that anybody who has done business will know, and he knows because he works with businessmen. That when you start a business, it doesn't grow in a year or 2 or 3 or 4
It takes you
or
7
5.
years.
Sometimes it can take you 10 years for you to turn around.
Okay, so,
depending on the
you
size and the capacity that you've put in
you've-
place.
All right, we'll take your word
And
for
the
10
markets
years.
that you've.
You see,
I
said
want the 1F will
sometimes-
grow in 10
I
years.
said,
Listen,
you see, don't,
listen.
when you do that, I tell you are being mischievous. I said, sometimes
never mischievous.
It doesn't take you 1 year,
You
2
said-
years. I said it can take you more.
Roland, you've given him all the
I said it can take
You've
you more.
given him
It can
all,
take
and
you.
it's not fair.
Someone can start a business and
You are gagging
definitely to break even and go into profit mode will not take you 2 or 3 years.
All right.
But at least we've put in the machinery to start the pace, and that is what we need.
Is it
All
not
right.
strange?
Sorry, you only have 2 minutes.
Yes, is it not
Unfortunately.
strange that the people who said I shall transform the economy in 18 months are now talking about 10 years? You see, when H.E. John Dramani Mahama
You have
said,
2 minutes also.
when H.E. John Dramani Mahama said Akufo-Addo Bawumia were inexperienced, they took offense.
Even his
But
experience.
but their governance has demonstrated the level of inexperience. You see, if you give a toddler all the monies in this world, he will come home broke. And these toddlers, the Ghanaians made the mistake of 2016 in giving power to them. With 298 billion of tax revenue, minus 3 oil fields. If you put the money we've gotten from oil,
You had 248
loan
billion.
everything to them, they have gotten in excess of 600 billion Ghana cedis in 6 years.
That is
And they
everything
are
that is
back
worrying you.
with nothing, empty hand, the prodigal son.
So they don't see anything.
This
going on
is the
in
kind of
situation.
people who have been so reckless. Now today he says, look, Parliament approve everything and every loan.
That's true, Parliament approved.
It's not. The $11 billion Euro bond, let him tell you what they use the money for. When we went for 3 billion from the Chinese, we used 1 billion to build a Tuabo. You can see it. When we borrowed, we built the hospital here, Rich. When we borrowed, we built Terminal 3. Ask them what they have used the borrow
There's one
for.
district, one factory.
No, the one district,
Free
one
SHS.
No, please,
One
please, I beg
constituency.
you. First of all,
$1 million.
The one
One
district,
village, one
the one district, one factory.
ambulance.
See, the
All
one
these
district,
things are
one factory.
ongoing.
Do you know where they've gotten the money? Exim Bank.
But isn't it government that puts their money there?
Please, it is money from the ports directly. So how are you talking about it? You are not using
government also invests money there.
You use the borrowed fund for that.
Please.
2, how much have they spent on free SHS in the space of 6 years? September 2017 till date, they've done less than 7 billion.
Maybe he doesn't know how Exim Bank
out of 298 billion, how much have you spent? You spent only 10 billion on roads. So when we look at the tangibles, you spent less than half of the money that came. The rest,
but there's one constituency, $1 million to be able to build a number of.
The MPs are not happy when you say this. In fact, my own Honorable Agboja will tell you that if you say 1 million came to his constituencies, his constituent may think that he's the one keeping the money.
Roland.
It's with Akufo-Addo.
Roland.
He's keeping that money. He's not giving it to the constituency.
But it was Abuja's constituency that they did the independence celebrate. Yes, the whole
and when did they do it? When did they do it? The sports complex, who built it?
The banking,
the youth sports complex, who built it?
The banking issue that
10 of those
about.
across the country.
Only 20
at that time we had 10 regions.
Only 20 million.
At that time we had 10 regions.
But you see,
and you sit here and say that you don't.
When the Honorable Atoforsin said,
you sit here and say,
the
look
banks
at the
were going to
interchanges that have been built.
People thought Atoforsin was just doing politics.
The haircut.
Yes, the haircut. He said, look, this haircut.
It was denied by the president.
It was denied. So our president, beyond being dishonest, had acted as a toddler who had been giving money and had destroyed our economy. It's painful.
Yes, I'm telling you, on authority. At the time the president was giving the speech, there wasn't anything like haircuts.
Please. So who are his advisors?
It's a communication for
listen,
Gov't.
so you want to tell me that when economic conditions change within a day?
But it is true, the president said there will be no haircut.
But you know that the president,
and he insisted on it.
But you know the president said, we are going to the IMF and we'll get it approved by when? Today, they are saying that May. You see, you can't keep lying. You can't keep lying to the people.
Who told you me?
Please,
when
is the board meeting?
We're ending the segment. When we come back, we're ending the segment. When we come back, we'll take you to Kumasi after sports. We'll comprehensively look at the fire incident that have plagued the Kajetia market. Nicely built market, fire incident. We'll question issues that are being raised by the traders there, those who own the stores, and whether there could be some remedies. Kumasi, Kajetia market under fire, and how we need to protect what we have by way of assets. What did you want to say, Edwin?
Roland, you know Madam Betty Mode is turning 7.